Hi, welcome to Grandad on Enfield. Today we're taking a look at the newly opened Barry's Court Castle. It's eastbound on the N25 Cork to Waterford Road. It's junction 4, then take the road L3612. After you go through the roundabout, when you go to the top and you turn right, you take the next right. At that, there's a big stone sign outside saying Barry's Court Castle. Now, this was closed in 2015 for renovation. It's just after being open to the public because of the COVID. And so today is the first day it's open, so luckily there's not many people around. So we'll take a look and see what they've done. They've done a lot of electrical work, a lot of roofing. And they've opened a couple of the buildings that weren't open before. So, I can say it's been 9 years now since it was opened. So, we're having a look around today. You see, there was a lot of electrical work and
They did great work back in the medieval times with the electrics, didn't they?
it was the Barry's Castle. As far as I know, there was a moat around it. That's long since dried up. You see the depth, the thickness of the walls, the depth of the windows. Just a bit of history on it. There's gardens as well outside, and entrance is free. Okay, we're about to start the guided tour now, so.
So firstly I have to say the many the corridor of the semi-falls were up in Cashdown Court na Barry. So what that is, it's traditional Irish welcome, literally translated as many blessings of God upon you, friends, and welcome to Barry's Court Castle. So we'll start off with the stories of Barry's and who they are. So the first Barry we know of is a man named Odo. He arrived in England in 1066 with William the Conqueror. So that was the Norman invasion of England. 2 generations later, there was a man named Robert Fitzstephen. He arrived in Ireland with a man named Strongbow. And following this, Richard Fitzstephen was granted lands in Cork, where we are now. Along with that, so rather than, he had his own lands to manage, so what he did was give the land to family. So Philip de Barry, who would be the grandson of Odo, he was granted where we are today, all the way up to Castlelyons and Connacht. It was called the Cantred of Olatan. So Olatan comes from the old Irish family I Leohon, and that was their translation. In terms of why build a castle here, so at the time, the main road from Cork to Youghal, which would be 2 important towns at the time, the main road went through the town of Carrigtwohill, also the only road to Cove, so Fort Island and Great Island, actually passed just behind us here. That was the only road to Cove, so essentially the Barrys could control who came and went. Also, at the time, the sea was just 100 metres away from us on the other side, so they had access to the sea as well. This site itself has been used since the Bronze Age. There remains of a Fullocht Fia from the Bronze Age were found just northeast of us here. So a Fullocht Fia is essentially a Bronze Age oven, is the easiest way to describe it. They also found remains of a 7th century watermill on the site, and they found a mortar building or a stone building dated from 1200, around the time the Barrys arrived here. They mostly believe it is another mill. They wanted to be the original castle, but we can't find that yet. They spent all last summer digging up the car park trying to find the original castle. Have you any other questions? Well, now if you want to go up and just wait for me in the next hall.
So this is the newly refurbished stairways. And we're up to the hall up here. Hopefully you can hear the guide's explanation of things. It, they try to furnish it in period correct pieces.
So where we came in today, obviously that stairs wasn't there. This was the stairs and the wall, essentially the wall was blocked off where we walked through, so this was the only access in. There's a writing from 1620 by the Englishman who came this way from Munster, and this writing of business starts. So the first thing that would happen is all the ladies of the castle would be lined up here to welcome guests. You were given beer, then brandy, then whiskey. The way it should be. It was the same when leaving, you had to drink all the drinks before you were allowed to leave as well. So this was the main hall, this is where guests would be greeted, and there used to be another hall outside, so the way I see it is you meet the Lord's man outside. If it's important enough and you're important enough, you're brought up here. If you're very, very important, you go upstairs. You'll see that later. So one thing of interest in the castle, so humans don't live here anymore, it's now with bats live. And the bats are the most important people. There are 10 bat boxes in the castle. They also have little nooks and crannies where they live. Do you want to have a look up the chimney there and see the bat box? They hang down. Have a look at anyone wants to look. So we have to leave here every night at 7 o'clock so that the bats can have their house back. All of the items at the tables, they're all reproductions. The castle laid empty for many, many years, and everything that is here was taken, edited. You will notice there's no coffee on the table. So at the time, these wooden bowls essentially were filled with water, and that's how they washed their hands. Any questions about this room? No? You might be head this way. This is what's called the kitchen. How much the kitchen is now inside of it. But it's I'm going to say for everyone taller than me, which is all over the age of 10, please mind your head. And there's big steps as well. About abandoned, maybe 1700. The family left in 1627. Yeah.
Gulf influence or?
Say again?
Gulf influence?
No, the tower house became old fashioned, so they moved to Castle Lines and built a different structure.
Is this the kitchen?
Yeah, this is the kitchen.
Tiny, isn't it?
Well, a lot of the cooking, most of the cooking would have been done outside.
Oh, okay.
Because, so this is the original floor. You can see the ceiling is quite black. If you want to have a look at the fireplace, there's just a hole a few metres up on the side of the castle.
Right.
So if the wind was blowing this way, Then all the smoke was blowing in here as well. So I don't know how much cooking was done here. It's more of a utility room, is it? Yeah. But that's this room anyway. Like, I just love the floor, the fact it's so the way it was. We'll go back out again. Have a look at the rooms on the right and the left as you leave, and then you can tell me what they are. It is indeed. Now just check one that way as well, if you want.
Yeah.
And just mind your head.
Can you believe? Imagine his head. That's not what I ask here.
It's a room with a view. Guess what type of room it is?
Thank you for telling me about that.
Oh, you can, yeah?
Which is great. We're back here again. Oh, yeah, we're back here again.
Yeah.
And you go down that thing.
Oh no, there'll be a bit of hot water down
Oh my God.
Just don't go on, okay?
You just told me you wanted to have water. What do you think how you did water?
Oh, I get the light on the board, so sorry. Essentially private, and this was the family's room unless you're very, very close to them or very, very important. About this room, so if you come this way, we can see the fireplace is actually dated to 1588. You might notice that there was a window here. Do you see it? They took the window out to put the fireplace in. The window on this side as well, you also have an inscription that says 1586, so we can date them, which is lovely. Originally, when the castle was built, the fireplace would have been just here. There was a thatched roof with some coal or some, I don't know what they had to get the smoke out. But then, once they put the fireplace and chimney breast in, as you can probably see, they were ready to build up. Along the grey line, there would have been, I suppose, a balcony with someone playing a harp. Also, there's a door upstairs that the Lord could probably listen out and see what to say about it. If you want to have a look, we have a lovely double toilet over here. A fancy double toilet. So if you can actually read the inscription here, it says it was built by DB at ER. So DB refers to David Barry. He's probably one of the most, I'll just mention the women. And ER is Ellen Roach they would have been a powerful Norman family up in the Fermoy region. David Barry is probably the most colourful of the lords of Barry who were here. His father, we'll go back 2 generations. So William Barry was the lord of the Barrys in the 1550s. William was getting old and William had no children. By this time the Barrys had been in Cork for 250 years? No? Yeah, 250 years. And so there were cousin branches around the county. So we had the fancy cousins out by Inishan and Kinsale, the Barry Oaks, or the junior Barrys. And further in West Cork we had the country cousins, the Barrarua, so the Red Barrys. So the Lord William was like, okay, who's going to be my successor? So in the Barry Rolls, there was a man named James. James was very far down the line of succession for the Barry Rolls and Barrys in general, but he clinically murdered a whole entire line of cousins to get himself higher up on the chain. He still wasn't in line there, but William was so impressed, he said, he's my man, he's going to be my lord. William's son then is David Barry. So during the Desmond Rebellions in 1581, he was Lord. Walter Raleigh was coming from York with about 1,000 troops, and he said, no, I can't, I'm not going to hold this castle. So what he did, he essentially pillaged and plundered this castle. So the thatch roof would have been burned, the windows were broken, there was some wooden outhouse buildings, they were all burnt down, so that the castle would be no value to the other side, I would say. So he's quite interesting then. Afterwards, he went to London, said sorry. He paid £500, which is about €200,000 today, and he got all his lands and all his titles back. When you think like the man on the castle, so what's €200,000?
His and hers toilet. Again, you get a view. So we're on to one of the rooms now that hasn't been opened before to the public after the renovations.
I'm just here. Yeah, there's original stuff as well. Yeah. Else? Chapel. Yeah, well, the chapel. So firstly we have the altar here facing east, and obviously at the time the priest didn't turn around until 1964. And we have the font or piscina here. We have two aumbrys or cupboards on the walls, so they would have held books, oils, any relics. I'm guessing the sacrament would have been kept in this one. But the magic here is the walls. So first of all, I want to point out we have some Om here. For anyone who doesn't know, Om was, say, the written language before we had the alphabet we use today. There's more Om here. We don't have a perfect translation because it's so deteriorated, but we think it says Amen Fidelis, but it's not going to be known ever again because it's getting worse and worse over time. And here we have someone called Mary who said, I'm more important than home writing. I'm going to keep my unique name and put it on the wall. And up here above the door, you'll see there's some red. That's original red paint. And it's very hard to find, say, older wall paintings in Ireland due to the, first of all, the climate we have, and second of all, the way it was done. If anyone is a nerd like me and wants to know how they did it, please ask me afterwards. But the magic here for me in this room, it might take you time to see it. We have a ship here. We have more ship here. We have ship down here. There's another ship next to the altar. Well, what remains of a sail. Can you all make up the ship?
I can.
So you're thinking at the time, right, this was a full seascape along the wall.
Yeah.
You know, outside that window, we had the sea was 100 meters away. You know, so like what they said was the walls of the chapel or churches was called the Biblia Paupernum, so the Bible of the poor, because generally none of us would have been able to read back then unless we were teachers or priests essentially, so that's how they conveyed the messages to everyone. I mentioned earlier about the radiocarbon carbon dating, so there's a wicker that was held up the ceiling as they were building, so it was two pieces of wicker they found that they were able to date the new castle, and we got the new date. And I could stay here all day long. Look, you're sleeping there tonight.
Of course they do. We made. Imagine if you have to walk so much to get bed.
But if you're the Lord, they come to you. Mind your head coming in there, sir. And that's 10. So as you can see with the bed, this is the main bed chamber. This would have been the lower bed chamber as it's the highest building in the entire tower. In terms of features, so again, like downstairs, this was a part of renovation, so it's 1596. Again, they would have had the patch above, and any fire would have been just here. When they put in the fireplace, then they were able to build up, so you can probably see some joists. Joist holes, they're actually from the same time as the fireplace, so there's possibly another room up here, maybe an attic level as well, but that would have been accessed by steps, or stairs, sorry. One thing that's important in this room is, you can see these windows, there's 3 in this room. They're one of 3 of 5 original windows that survived all renovations. This type of window,
Well, the actual window. Sorry.
not the window, but the frame, sorry.
Frame,
Yeah. No, the window's new. This type of window is not found anywhere else in Ireland. There's 3 examples in England, 2 in Yorkshire, 1 in Wiltshire, with the same side window. And the buildings of those castles were 1378 to 1393, so they correspond with the new dates and backs it up, which I think is fantastic. This is the Bats Maternity Ward. You see where they have their babies. Then you'll see all the nooks and crannies. And if you want to look up the fireplace, you can see they've got a grand big entrance and exit to get in and out. Yeah. If you see, the bed is quite short. People at the time, they went to sleep sitting up. Because if the Grim Reaper saw you lying down, we think you're dead and take you away.
Oh, really?
Yeah. On these 3 windows as well, I haven't read about these anywhere, and I can't confirm, but you'll see there's 2 little pillars, and the one on the right hand side is taller than the left hand side in all of them.
Yeah.
And I can't think what else it could be, just the Lord and the Lady.
Mm.
So I think David Barry and Ellen Roach, they left their mark all over the castle. Obviously they have the one toilet, but they have the garden for themselves as well. Any questions? So we'll head back downstairs down to the exhibition hall. I can tell you a bit more information. Alright, storeroom. Defensively as well, we have nooks in the walls to arch out of. If there was anyone coming, they would have been important before the wall was built, which came later than the castle. In terms of the Barrys then, so I mentioned David Barry upstairs, 1581, yeah, he did all that. He had 6 daughters and 1 son. Unfortunately, his 1 son did die childless, but luckily, a year later, his wife Elizabeth Power did give birth. Now, I need to look up dates, because is it plus or minus 9 months that the baby was born? So then his son was David, who died, and then the new baby was also called David. Unfortunately for the family, David Barry, Grandad David, died when the child was 12 years of age. So now he was the Lord at the age of 12. He was taken under the wardship of Robert Boyd, who later became the first Earl of Cork. He was raised by Robert Boyd. Prior to this, the Barrys had been Catholic. As he was raised by David Boyd, was Protestant. The child then became a Protestant, married at the age of 16 to Robert Boyd's daughter, Alice. Shortly after, Barry's court wasn't so important anymore. The Tower House became less fashionable. It was generally a time of more peace, so people built not defensive towers, there were more elaborate houses. And in 1627, the Barry's court stopped reading the accounts of the Barry family and they moved to Castlelands. You can read more about the later Barrys here, there's some interesting characters. Essentially, gambling was a big issue, so they lost all their properties. Following that, Barry's court was rented out to other families. We have the remains of the Coffin House outside, so the Coffin Church would have been a Norse family who were probably here before the Normans arrived in Ireland. Then later it was used, this whole building would have been used as a grain store, and the courtyard outside was for cows. So then in the 80s, do you believe here, quite frankly? In 1987, the Barry's Court Trust took over to essentially make this usable for visitors again, and then the Office of Public Works got involved. We've just had 10 years of renovations to keep it going for a few hundred years, and that's the story of Barry's Court Castle.
Okay, we're going into the orchard now outside the castle.
Ali se skoro kako je sve napravljeno u obrmenom stilu. I know, this is where they were relaxing.
You can see still parts of the garden wall.
Here, wait, honey, here.
There's fruit trees. Okay, that concludes our tour of the newly opened Barry's Court Castle. Like I say, it closed in 2015 for renovation works, then COVID knocked it back a bit. It's first weekend it's open now this year. Or first weekend it's open in the last nearly 10 years. So, ride safe, get home and ride your own ride. Thanks, Grandad on Enfield.